In the spring of 2026, the world was humming with the frantic energy of post-pandemic recovery. But for Paul, it was just another Tuesday. His life in London was a relentless, grinding loop, 10-hour shifts hauling boxes in a chilly warehouse, followed by bleary-eyed study sessions that stretched deep into the night. His tiny room, in what he grimly called the immigrant's crouch, was filled with dreams of coding, of algorithms, of a life beyond the concrete floor and the endless stacks of inventory. The dream of breaking into the UK's glittering tech sector felt impossibly distant. A far-off star he could only glimpse through the city's perpetual haze. Then came a rainy Tuesday in April, the kind of day where the gray sky weeps onto the city's ancient stones, washing everything clean. Fed up with the noise and distractions of his shared flat, Paul decided he needed a real place to study for his crucial certifications. He boarded a double-decker bus, letting it carry him westward without a clear destination until the grand architecture of South Kensington pulled him from his thoughts. He got off, the drizzle clinging to his coat, and found himself wandering through the warren of streets behind the massive, red brick fortress of Imperial College London. He stumbled upon a small, steamy cafe, its windows foggy with warmth and conversation. It was a tiny haven tucked away from the grandeur of the museums and the university. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of coffee and damp coats. Every table was taken, a tapestry of students, tourists, and locals all seeking refuge from the rain, all except for one small spot, a single empty chair at a table already occupied by a young woman. She was completely absorbed, surrounded by a barricade of thick engineering textbooks, scattered blueprints, and a tablet that cast a soft, futuristic glow on her face. Summoning the courage he rarely felt these days, Paul approached her table. "Excuse me," he began, his voice still carrying the warm, gentle lilt of his home, a sound that felt out of place in the sharp-edged London accent all around them. "Is this seat taken?" The woman looked up, startled from her world of equations and designs. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, widened for a second before softening. No, please, sit," she said, her voice clear and quick. She hastily gathered a pile of rolled-up blueprints, her movements efficient and precise. Her name was Amara. As it turned out, she was a postgraduate student right there at Imperial, specializing in the complex world of renewable energy. Paul simply nodded, mumbled a thank you, and slid into the chair, feeling a bit like an imposter in this academic sanctuary. They spent the first hour in a companionable, concentrated silence. Paul dove into his laptop, lines of code scrolling across the screen, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Amara was equally immersed in her tablet, her stylus dancing as she annotated complex diagrams. They were the separate islands in the bustling sea of the cafe, each lost in their own world of ambition and pressure. Then it happened. A flicker, a stutter, and then darkness on their screens. The cafe's Wi-Fi, a notoriously fickle beast in the tech-heavy year of 2026, had given up the ghost. A collective groan echoed through the small space. At their table, Paul and Amara let out identical, exasperated sighs at the exact same moment. The shared frustration was a tiny, perfect spark. It broke the ice. Amara glanced over at Paul's now frozen screen, her eyes drawn to the intricate patterns of logic he'd been weaving. "That's a pretty sophisticated algorithm for someone just sitting in a cafe," she remarked, a playful challenge in her tone. A real, genuine smile spread across Paul's face. It was the first one he'd shared with a stranger in months, a smile that had been buried under layers of exhaustion and self-doubt. It felt like a forgotten muscle coming back to life. He found himself opening up, the words tumbling out. He told her about his journey from Africa, the culture shock, the loneliness. He spoke of his determination not just to find a job, but to contribute something meaningful to the UK's tech landscape, to prove that his mind was his greatest asset. Amara listened, her full attention on him now. When he finished, she didn't offer pity or platitudes. Instead, she shared her own story. She talked about the immense pressure of studying at a world-class institution like Imperial, the constant push to innovate and excel. She spoke of her own family's history, their migration from East Africa a generation ago, and the quiet, unspoken expectations that came with it. She recognized in Paul a raw hunger for knowledge, a fierce drive that she felt many of her classmates, born to privilege, often took for granted. She saw a fellow traveler, just on a different part of the same road. As the afternoon light began to fade and the rain finally subsided, they prepared to leave. But Amara did something more than just exchange pleasantries. She didn't just give him her number. She looked him in the eye and said, There's an open guest lecture at the university this Thursday. It's on sustainable tech innovation. You should come. It wasn't just an invitation, it was an open door. That small gesture, that simple invitation, was the bridge Paul had been so desperately trying to build on his own. Meeting Amara changed everything. Through her, the intimidating, fortress-like walls of Imperial College stopped being a barrier and started becoming a gateway. She was his guide, his inside source. She introduced him to the right people, pointed him toward the right resources, and helped him navigate the Imperial Enterprise Lab, a hub designed specifically for aspiring entrepreneurs like him. He attended the lecture, and then another. He started spending his study time not in random cafes, but in the university's vast, inspiring library, surrounded by the very people he hoped to one day call his peers. He joined study groups Amara recommended, his unique perspective and coding skills quickly earning him respect. The concepts he had been studying in isolation suddenly came alive, connected to real-world problems and brilliant, collaborative minds. By the time the cherry blossoms burst into a riot of pink and white across London's parks, signaling the true arrival of spring, Paul's life had transformed. He was still working the warehouse shifts, but they no longer defined him. They were just the fuel for his journey. He was no longer just surviving in the UK. He was beginning to thrive. He was finally part of the conversation that mattered, walking the hallowed halls of Imperial, not as an outsider looking in, but as a peer, an innovator, a mind ready to make his mark. He had found his place, not by breaking down walls, but by finding a friend who held the door open for him. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and share your own stories of connection and perseverance in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. See you in the next one.